thank you for joining us for another exciting edition of the Camnet TV Breakfast Show on a Monday, the 18th of March. And Happy New Week to you. In case you're joining us, we're coming live to you via DSTV channel 274 and Top Star channel 106, as well as Go TV channel 25. And it is an exciting edition of the show altogether, because we do also know that for a fact that on Friday, President Hakainde Hichilema had the State of the Nation address in Parliament, where he did address a number of issues relating to the morals, the principles and values of the country as enshrined in Article 8 of the country's constitution. All those are issues that indeed came out, and one of the pronouncements was the fact that CDF was going to be increased every year, as well as issues relating to supply of water, especially in areas that are prone to cholera. I'm your host, Nelson Zula, and I'm not alone in the studio. I'm joined by my colleague, just like every Monday, Joe Clapello Simata, and it is exciting so due to the fact that Chelsea yesterday beat up Leicester City, and it must be a very exciting Monday.
It's an exciting Monday. You know, I'm a Chelsea fan, and of course, us beating Leicester sends a resounding warning to all Premier League teams that Chelsea is still a team to reckon with. However, congratulations to Manchester United. They put up a spirited fight, beating your team, Liverpool, unfortunately. And it was a game to watch, and it was very exciting, Nelson. We had, for me, I think the epitome of my weekend was yesterday, watching that particular match.
Wow. I'll leave it at the fact that it was a game worth the time, but let's meet again in the next 2 weeks, and then we shall decide who the real red is between Manchester United and Liverpool, as it is. But it was an exciting game, if you ask me.
Yeah, it was an exciting game, and of course, not forgetting that we do have our guests. Honorable Sensual Banda, he is the former Kasanengwa MP. Honorable, do you support any team in the Premier League?
Of course, Chelsea.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
Well, I need security. I need security. I'm the two Chelsea fans.
Okay, so our guest here is Honorable Sensual Banda. He is the former Kasanengwa MP, and we are going to be discussing a number of issues, including what Nelson alluded to, the presidential address, to the drought, and obviously the Constituency Development Fund as well. And we urge you or implore you, our viewers, to come through and give us your own submissions as well. What was your takeaway home regarding the presidential address by the Republican President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema? Now, Honorable, to get into it, let's get your thoughts on the presidential address to Parliament on the 15th of March 2024 that took place on Friday.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to come through to this interview. Okay. And also, I'm saying hello to the viewers out there. Yeah, my views on the address, as you may know very well, that the president goes to Parliament at the behest of the Constitution, because the Constitution provides that yearly you should be able to go and address the nation and highlight how best the government has performed, or how best the nation has performed in terms of implementing these values and principles as is stipulated by Article 9 and 2 of the Constitution of Zambia, which highlights the thematic issues. For example, it talks about morality and ethics. It talks about issues to do with democracy and constitutionalism. It talks about issues to do with patriotism and national unity, and also human dignity among them. So obviously, I took time to listen to that particular address. Okay. He addressed a lot of issues, but I'll just maybe pick two out of those, for simple reason, because they hinge on the how best we thrive our young democracy as Zambia. As you know, Zambia is a constitutional democracy. How have we applied ourselves? Because if we look at democracy and constitutionalism, the president did pronounce himself in terms of promoting the virtues of democracy. he did indicate that actually, and I quote, allow me to quote, and I quote, it says, the government is committed to deepen Zambia's democracy and constitutionalism and the surest way for people to enjoy rights and freedom to participate in decision making. And also the president further went on to say government has created an environment that promotes tenets of good democracy and so on and so forth. So based on that, I want to give a reaction. Okay. And furthermore, he did actually hint to the fact that this is supported by an international institute which did a study to authenticate that actually Zambia is a thriving democracy and is third on the in Africa in terms of thriving democracy. That said, allow me, I believe that for me, I must deal issues with evidence.
Okay.
For example, President HH, when they were in opposition, when they're making campaigns, their focus was they will govern by the rule of law.
Okay.
They will govern by the rule of law. And that said, the rule of law is a bedrock through which government we can establish trust and so on and so forth by government, or is a framework within which citizens actually enjoy their rights and apply themselves. So that said, let's go to realities. When President SH became the head of this nation, the first thing he did was he moved ACC, DEC. He appointed an IG who went deputy IG to sit at State House. Already in itself, that was watering down the rule of law, because these are institutions of democracy. Because what that did was the people lost confidence and trust in this institution to effectively apply themselves as the law provides. And furthermore, is that again we have seen the heavy-handedness of the police in terms of dealing with the matters. We have seen in instances where opposition are incarcerated, and are made to stay in the custody more than what the law provides. At times, even getting the police bond itself becomes a challenge. So these are some of the issues, and you see, I'm saying this because one of the tenets to thrive democracy, one of the principles is the doctrine of separation of power. And already we've seen the executive itself has got a challenge to govern or to give latitude to the institution of governance to apply themselves. The other aspect is that you go to Parliament today, it's a mess. The Parliament MPs.
Maybe let's find out. Yes. When you talk about Parliament, that's an interesting issue, because we have seen, or we saw what happened previously in Parliament last year. But Honorable, before we even come to the issues that have to do with Parliament, let me ask you this question. But there are some assertions from some sections of society suggesting that there is a shrinking democratic space. Let me get it from you. What are your views regarding these particular assertions? Do you subscribe to the notion that there is shrinking democratic space?
Yeah, already I have highlighted because the doctrine of separation of power provides for the thriving of democracy. Okay. And already when you move the institutions which ought to uphold that, and they sit at State House, in itself already is an indictment that we have a problem. Okay, let me give an example in the case of Parliament. Parliament is the highest house where we make laws for the land, for the good of the people. But what has happened in Parliament, we've seen unconstitutionalism in how matters are being handled. An example is in the case of UPND, in the case of PF Wrangle, which is happening right now, where there's PF1 and PF2. And what happened was that the other faction went ahead and appointed a
leader of opposition,
and the related whips. But there is a provision within which that must be done. Article 74(2) and Standing Order 43(2) provides how the leader of the house and the relative whips must be appointed. Already, you see, when the matter, the speaker went ahead and pronounced herself without following what the constitution provides.
Okay.
And furthermore, the debate in parliament has been stifled. We've seen time and again where opposition members of parliament, when they raise pertinent issues, they are told to sit down. Let me give an example. There was a time when Honorable Munir raised an issue of Barato issue as an agent matter of national security on the floor of the House.
Okay.
He was shut down, asked not to debate on this matter or put it in a question.
By the presiding officer.
By the presiding officer. But again, a similar matter happened when the Honorable Nagachindo was incarcerated at Kabwata and people were tear gassed. And there was the pronouncement which was made by the former president. And the Honorable Michelo came to the floor of the House and said, this issue borders on the national security. And he was allowed to debate. And to that effect, the presiding officer asked for the Home Affairs Minister to pronounce himself, make a statement. You see those disparities, you see those partialities. An example is just before this particular speech, which was done by the president, a day before, the tradition is that actually you need to to debate on the matter. Okay, and they were asked, is there anyone able to debate? And Honorable Katogi raised to debate, but it was curtailed. So already you see is that there is that stifling of debate in the House.
Maybe what's the difference, Honorable? Nelson, before you come in, I want to find out. The Honorable was in Parliament prior to 2021. Now, post 2021, what has been the difference, Honorable, when you look at post 2021 and before 2021? What has been the difference? How is the conduct of the House? You have mentioned the issues that have to do with disparities in Parliament. Where are these disparities coming from, Honorable? How was the House in 2018 to 2021 and post 2021, according to you?
If you remember, before 2021, our colleagues, when they were in opposition, they debated.
Okay.
They debated, and they were not curtailed. The records are there to show that. In fact, for our colleagues, it was an avenue for them to expose themselves to Zambians out there.
Okay.
So basically, the bottom line, the difference with then and now is the kind of leadership which is being provided in the House. So what is happening right now is at the behest of the presiding officers, because they are there not to present a partisan view or position. They are there to represent Zambians, because that house is one of the highest house in the land, and there's need to actually to uphold the decorum of the house. And one of them is for these leaders, you know, to hold themselves true to what they are mandated to do in the house, to allow debates, to allow people, because people are voted there to go and represent the views of the people. And when you can tell the members in the House, you are simply shutting up the people out there. So I think the presiding officers can do better on that score. But again, like I said, is that it's so surprising, for argument's sake, the issue of the opposition member leader in the House. You found that the Commonwealth tradition is such that when the matter is before the court, the Parliament cannot pronounce itself. And when the matter is before Parliament, the court cannot pronounce itself. The matter was in court. But what happened? Honorable Nelly Moti went ahead and made those decisions. Already you're seeing that all that is watering the rule of law. And when moved to judiciary, judiciary has not been spared itself. Why do I say so? President HH, when he was in opposition, he did hint that there was need to strengthen the judiciary, because it's our last resort in terms of to get justice when we think our rights have been taken away. But again, if you talk about strengthening the judiciary, is also to deal with laws which affect how judges are appointed to sit on the bench. So what I expected for the UPND government under the leadership of HH is to deal with those laws which hinge on the appointment of judges sit on the board, so that one, there's transparency and there's merits in how people sit on the board. But the same laws which were being applied then are being applied now. How do we expect there will be any difference in terms of how we apply ourselves? And that is why you've seen a lot of issues in the judicial realm, as it were. So this is an indictment on President H.'s leadership and government, as it were.
Now, Honorable, I would like to also find out from you. I know you did mention or did explain in terms of how we've seen a shift in the operation of Parliament as well as the country's political landscape. But here's a report that was filed by Variety Institute Democracy, VDEM, that did indicate that Zambia is in the top 3 countries in terms of the democracy improving. Now, having highlighted all those issues, are you of the view that this report is de facto?
So, allow me just to say one thing. So, for me, I've been my background is in research and not in evaluation, and I've applied myself in the area of research for about 20 years. Okay. And when that report came, and because I looked at what is obtaining on the ground, there's a huge disparity on the pronouncement of the report, and also on what is obtaining on the ground in view of the things I have highlighted. So what made me now do is to try to find out which institution is this? Okay, where do they come from? What do they stand for?
Let's begin from there, Honorable.
Yes.
Interesting.
So basically, it's Varieties of Democracy Institute. It was founded in 2014. Okay. In 2014, and the founder is Professor Stefan Lindesbeck. Okay. He's a political scientist, and also is a lecturer in the university called Gothenburg in Sweden. Okay. So, and he is a principal investigator of the institute, and also the director of the institute. Okay. And does not end there. He has applied himself in many areas of academic sphere. But also, if you look back, he was a parliamentary advisor to Ghana. Okay. He was parliamentary advisor to Ghana. Yes. Okay. And that rings a bell, because right now we have advisors at State House of that nature, as it were. And two, I wanted to, because even as they are collecting this information about what is obtaining here in Zambia on the ground, what mechanism have they put in place? Okay, and I discovered that actually they have an office here in Zambia, and which is being led by a lecturer called Njekwa Mate, who is the regional manager for that institute. So now, for me already, and I'm asking these guys, they went to collect data as what is obtaining here in Zambia. For example, I looked at their approach in terms of dealing with the matter of what they look at about 60 indicators which are put in thematic groups. For example, on the quality of governance and the well-being of the economy, and also and other aspects, you know, inequality, social inequality, and so on and so forth, and all that. And when I look at these thematic issues and what is obtaining on the ground, it's to the contrary. And I ask myself, why did these people, Mr. Jekwa Mate and his team, collect this data to say that we are a thriving democracy? I'm asking myself, who's fooling who? Because you see, I was in PF, and I know for such windows to advance your cause. An example is prior elections, PF. There was a study which was done pointing that PF will win with the landslides. But you see, you cannot govern country with propaganda. And the truth came out. PF lost. And here it is today. We have an institution which is saying that we're thriving in our democracy. But on the ground, it's contrary. So the issue is that what is the motive? That the lessons are there to learn from PF. You cannot run a country with propaganda. What is critical is for President HH to acknowledge these pitfalls. When you acknowledge these pitfalls, you make changes and advance the interest of the nation, as it were. So for me, that report or can say who's fooling who. Just get us that.
But the president did acknowledge that, look, this is an international report that has been recognized by a lot of people in his address, and it shows that we're heading somewhere, and this administration is doing everything possible to ensure that
top three?
Yes, democratic countries, so that the country improves.
I've highlighted what's happening in the executive. I've highlighted what's happening at the legislature. What's happening in the judiciary. And you know, the discipline of separation of power is at the very core to thrive democracy. But when that is destroyed, what democracy are we talking about? You know, we can't talk about that. In any case, even PF said, it was said actually that it was a renowned institute which did that study. Of course, some of us, we said, this does sound good, because we know what's obtaining on the ground. But of course, the institute pronounced itself. But reality, harsh reality, always exposes the truth. So you cannot run a country through propaganda. The best they could have done, because already I know who the founder, who it is, and has been an advisor somewhere in some government, and the same model is being applied here. There must be some collaboration. They have an office here, and Njekwa Mate is a manager for this country, and I've been in the field. I know what is possible, as it were. So for me, is that the reality on the ground does not speak to what that report says.
Now, let's look to this issue. I know the president in his address on Friday as well did indicate that we have a national disaster and we are facing some economic challenges that have steered the country's budget for 2024 to be realigned. And he called for unity among political players to come and join. And as of yesterday, we did have an interaction from Sikongo Member of Parliament in Mayungo Simushi, as well as Kafulafuta Member of Parliament, Mr. Jeffrey Mulewa, who are actually calling for the former president, Mr. Edgar Lungu, and the current president, to reconcile so that this can be of a greater solution to the challenges that the country is facing. What is your take on this issue?
First and foremost, there must be a basis of the reconciliation.
Okay.
What is it which went wrong between these two leaders? What went wrong? Is it of personal interest or of national interest? Okay, so basically what it is that there is need to reconcile these differences, but there must be honesty as we go to the table. We must not be one, you say one thing, and two, you do another, because there must be trust. If we talk about reconciliation and national unity, there must be honesty even as we go to the table. Yes, there is need for that.
Yes,
there's need to unite.
But both leaders have said we hold no grudge against each other.
You see, the issue is that actions speak louder than words.
Okay.
Okay. We have seen how both leaders have pronounced themselves, but rightly so. For example, an example is when President Edgar Lungu pronounced himself is in view of what happened. For example, during Honorable Nakachinda's issue, is in view of what happened. So for me is that even as we want to advance this issue to ensure this reconciliation and national unity, let us abide by what we promised. You uphold the rule of law. When you uphold rule of law and you are inviting people to the table, there's that magnanimity when you come there. But when you see that these excesses being committed, you know, there are this partiality in terms of how matters are administered at the police. And there are all these, for example, you talk about freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, where the opposition will go to inform the police that they want actually to have their rally. Those rights are curtailed. And all these things are happening. And you ask somebody, come and sit on the table. Let's be honest. There must be magnanimity in terms of the parties. In fact, President HH is the bigger brother in the sense that he has the instrument of power. He has the mechanism to make this happen. And he has the latitude to apply himself in terms of upholding the rule of law. So when something goes wrong right now, HH has a bigger role to ensure that there's cohesion in terms of providing leadership to the nation. So yes, I know and I agree that there must be reconciliation, but we have we have to reconcile with our pronouncement and how we act ourselves. We have to reconcile ourselves in upholding the rule of law. No doubt about it, there's need actually for leaders to reconcile, but we must put details on the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is the moment that we invite you, the viewers, to come through and call us and interact with Honorable Sensio Banda. He is the former Kasanengwa MP. Come through and interact with him this particular morning on Camnet Breakfast Show. It is the Monday edition, and we are urging you to rise and thrive. Now, allow us to say good morning quickly to Esther Twambo. Thank you so much for tuning in. Evangelist Anthony Mwape, thank you so much. Bruce Lombe Msonda, thank you so much. Mr. Emmanuel Zulu, the young economist, thank you so much for coming through, sir. Mr. Kingsley Majila as well, thank you so much. And Mr. Raphael Chiwe, thank you so much. To mention a few, please come through and give us your call so that you are able to interact with the Honorable here with us this particular morning as we look at national matters. Now, Honorable, as we get into it, let's find out, there has been talk of regulating online podcasts, and this has been met with mixed reactions or polarized opinions from members of the public out there. Honorable, what is your take on this particular thorny and thorny matter that is in public domain?
Just as a continuation from where I ended, we talk about Zambia thriving as one of the best democracy in Africa, and third for that matter, and we have such matters showing up. You know, for me, this is in bad faith. Okay. For example, the preliminary issues which have been raised because they want to amend the IB Act because it regulates the broadcasting, and the preliminary issues. For example, let me read. It says, you know, they want to redefine broadcasting. Okay, it says any form of transmission of audio-visual content intended for reception by the public, section of the public, or subscribers to any broadcasting services, regardless, it says, regardless of the means of transmission. You know, the challenge is that what are the intentions of the crafters of this particular amendment bill? Okay, because in itself, when crafting a law, there must be clarity. You must be clear what are your intentions, as it were. What are the intentions? Because the way it reads is very broad. It's very broad, as it were. So now all they want to do is to let the court interpret. Okay. It's very broad, and let the court interpret. And in that regard, for example, what they're saying is that they must regulate in how we actually interact. I had some engagement with one or two people regarding this matter. They are saying they want to regulate the podcast and live streaming. For crying out loud, the UPNB themselves, they are in government today at the best of social media, and they optimized this platform to thrive the cause of the people. You know, so this particular tool was used by UPNB. It reminds me of the current ambassador should be to Australia, and the current PS. Is it? Yes, it should be defense. I think so. But the Bakwetu radio, the Bakwetu TV, the ambassador to Australia, Muncha. Yes, they applied themselves. At times, even hailing insults. That platform was used for that. You know, people expressed.
So what happens to somebody who's broadcasting from overseas?
So for me is that will government, in view of this amendment, will they have the capacity and mechanism to deal with that? That's a concern, Honorable.
So, but if somebody decides to go live from outside the country, what happens?
And in South Africa, I go live.
Well,
I don't have that license.
I suppose the government will put mechanism in place to ensure to monitor and regulate that, as it were. But you see, here's the challenge. one, not only are they curtailing the right of Zambians to interact, to raise their venture views, but also they are affecting the ability of the youths, of the many youths out there who are using this tool as a means to generate income. There are a lot of bloggers who online they make money, but so you're telling me that Antimidi should now get a license to go online.
So they need a license.
As what is being defined here, it says, let me read again. It says, regardless of the means of transmission, regardless of whether WhatsApp, TikTok, Instagram,
one needs a license.
Facebook, this is what is defined. It says, regardless of the means.
Okay.
Whatever it may be, regardless of the means.
Now one might argue to say,
Yes.
we are about to come up with such a law as a country, but over time we've had issues in terms of coming up with a solution of how we're going to regulate mobile scammers, for instance. So how easy is it going to be to regulate the online space when we're able to regulate the numbers that are registered and are in the database?
Well, already that's a bottleneck, because if this law is passed, if the amendment is done, I'm yet to see how they'll manage to do that, because in itself it's a challenge. It's a mammoth task to do that. So, but for me, the question, if you do well, will you be afraid? The bottom line, the biggest challenge the UPND government has is to deliver. And Zambians are not asking for too much, you know. They're asking for very simple things. Putting bread and butter on the table. Issue of mealie meal. Ensure that mechanisms are put in place to ensure that every Zambian does not go hungry, you know. And also issues of fuel, you know, issues of electricity. And when they do well in these very elementary things, they will have no fear even for people to go online. If they do well, in fact, the social media will be the avenue through which people will express their gratitude on how best they are doing. But to muzzle the people, to think they should shut up, is very dangerous, because people will shut up.
Now let's talk about the issue of cost of living.
But I think even before that, Nelson, on the regulation of podcasts, there is another school of thought, Honorable, that tends to think or believe that this particular law was crafted by the PF and the UPN is only implementing it. This is an act that was left by the PF.
First and foremost, PF today is not in government because of those gaps. And this is why I have a problem in terms of UPND trying the benchmark for assessing its performance is PF. For me, I hold UPND accountable in terms of their performance on three measures, okay? Three perimeters.
Okay.
One, it is the promises which they made to the Zambians. And two is the mechanism they put in place to actualize these promises. They have in place the 8th National Development Plan, which highlights 4 pillars. The first pillar is economic transformation and job creation. The next pillar is social and human development. The next pillar is environmental sustainability. And the third pillar is actually rule of law and good governance. And the third measure for me to assess the performance of UPND is the tenure of office.
Okay.
So for me to say these laws were put in place by PF. For example, let me give an example. President HH said the Cyber Security and Cyber Criminal Act law is porous, is stifling, is muzzling the rights of Zambians to express themselves. He said the first thing he would do is to amend that law. Okay? The other law which you say by now should have been done was the Public Order Act. They said the moment they come into government, they'll repeal and replace, which is the Public Gathering Bill. Okay? They'll have done that by now. But now, instead of improving, they are further exacerbating the situation, because this proposal to amend the IBA Act does not provide for the thriving of democracy. In fact, it is in a hindrance to do so. So for me, UPND must do better. They must apply themselves. Pillar number 4, they will say they will thrive the democracy to ensure that they apply themselves to uphold rule of law. But I have highlighted instances on the 3 arms of government on main fronts where they have failed. So for me, they must measure themselves vis-a-vis the promises they've made, how they've applied themselves to implement this development plan within the 8 years. So for me, to say UPND, PF broke these laws, yes, and they were voted out because of that. So they need to make amends. They need to do better, because whatever they need to do, if PF failed, then they need to do that which will thrive the interest of the people. Basically, that's that.
Okay.
You did mention of the 8th National Development Plan, and mentioned about the pillar on economic transformation as well as job creation. Now, one of the third issue that one might relate to is the fact that the cost of living is relatively high. If we look at the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, they were giving us a perception that for a family of 5 in Lusaka to survive now, you need about 10,000.
10,307.
Yes, for a family of 5 to survive. And we've seen the country's inflation also increase from 13.2% to 13.5% in the month of February, right? And we've also seen, on top of this issue, issues relating to fuel pump price. How best do we need to come up with a solution, aside from what has been laid on the table, such as going the irrigation way, to ensure that cost of living reduces, talking about issues of minimum, as well as having prices that are cost reflective on when we talk of issues related to fuel?
Like you rightly said, is that right now, Zambians are barely making it. Okay, and if you look at the SI 43 or 48, if I'm not mistaken, which talks about the minimum wage for general workers and domestic workers, it's about 1,300. For drivers, it's about 2,000 plus. And you've already did hint that actually the food basket is about 10,000 plus. Already, that is indicative of the challenges which Zambians are facing. Zambians are barely making it. So now I think let's put things in perspective. Okay, so when UPND came into government, because most of the problem which Zambians are facing has to do with bread and butter, okay, with food. Let me give an example. Right now we have a drought, okay, and that has got an impact on the lives of people. Now, one, let's look at this way. We know about this El Nino, that El Nino is coming. Okay, because leadership must pronounce themselves or craft policies in view of evidence on the ground. We knew that El Nino is coming, okay, and obviously that should have been informed policy. But UPND, when they came into power in 2021, in terms of food security, we're at about a total of about 4.5. That includes the surplus for 2020, which is about 841,000 metric tons. And in that particular year, we used we had total consumption about 3 million, which included animal feed and export, and we remained with a surplus of about 1.5 million. So, in the wisdom of government, what did they do? There was a policy shift. They removed 10% on export of maize and exported all the maize to Congo. For example, 2021, 2022. In 2021, the export were about 49 million, according to Bank of Zambia statistics, $49 million in 2021. By the time in 2022, end of financial fiscal year, there was export of about $109 million on export of maize. But that is on the backdrop of that this maize ought to have been strategic reserves. And strategic reserves provide for, one, is to deal with tragedies like what we have right now. Two, is to stabilize the price of mealie meal. Right now, price of mealie meal is beyond many Zambians. Why? Because the strategic reserves which are meant to do that are not there. Okay? So, secondly, is for the surplus is to export. So, for me, even Zambians are already grappling, okay, with high cost of living, but the policy gap which we have will exacerbate the situation. But now you did say, what is the solution to this? What are the answers to this? For example, let me also give you a context. When the president pronounced when UPND became into power, one thing they did is that, at mistake, they stopped the issuance of investment certificates under ZDA. That did more harm to the economy, because what happens in the investment pipeline for 1 year, whatever opportunities you have could have been harnessed for last 4 years. That had a strength on the economy. The other aspect is that, let me not go on that. Now let me look at what solutions. For example, one thing which UPND should have done, in the case of, because their justification to say they sold the maize because PF left debt. Let me give an example. UPND knows for a fact that we have shares in these mining companies, okay, and we share revenue. And the basis for sharing is revenue, dividends. You understand that? But the government should have gone and negotiate that we share based on commodities. So this what would have happened. Commodities, you share cathodes, okay, and set up Zamefas, because one ton of copper is worth $9,000 on the market. Okay. But when you add value, it's about $150,000, meaning that give Zamefa that commodity, because you're sharing based on commodity. Add value, get the money, pay for what PF left in terms of debt, and also cushion the market, provide for subsidies. Another aspect, for example, we are living in what is called the fourth industrial revolution. This fourth industrial revolution has been necessitated, the developing environment through the Internet of Things, the virtual realities, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth.
Why are we not going that way as a country, Honorable? We seem to be lagging behind. Our colleagues are using artificial intelligence, electric cars. They seem to be going in that direction, but us, we seem to be going around in circles. Why is it like that?
And that's why I'm saying, for example, we have told ourselves, the president did pronounce that by 2026 we'll have done about 3 million metric tons of copper cathodes. Okay, and here is things. There is world trade and investment realignments because of what's happening in China, and most of the companies, American companies or the West companies, are moving out of China. Okay, and because in the Internet of Things, and virtual reality, and artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth, it has changed the way we do business. And also, what has happened because of this, there's high demand on critical minerals. Okay, and Zambia has got the top 5 critical minerals: copper, cobalt, lithium, nickel, and rare earth elements. So now, because of the new wave, the fourth industrial development, the thing is, how are we preparing ourselves as Zambia to tap in that? Because those companies, they'll come and invest here in Zambia. For example, let me give an example. Just an example. Copper 1 ton is worth $9,000, but when you improve the way of producing, for example, you've got what is called nano copper powder. It's a nano powder. Okay, nano powder. 1 ton of copper, okay, cathodes is worth $9,000, but 1 ton of nano powder copper is worth $493,000. You heard me correctly. So the issue is that the focus should be, we need to understand the global trade realignment going on, and the rush is for Africa, and we have these critical minerals. How do we leverage in that, to invest in that, and ensure that Zambians' living standards are improved, as it were?
Before Joe comes in with another question, I know he's begging to have a question asked. I would like you to address this from one of our followers on Facebook. Isaac Chileshe, big ups to you and good morning to you. Who says, good morning, my two brothers and our guest. My good honorable cousin is not truth in what he's saying. He's a former lawmaker and purely he knew what he left as PF. Let him go to Honorable Mwetwa and get schooled. He never heard any insult from Wakwitu TV. Let him ask.
Oh, that's Wakwetu, meaning Wakwetu.
Yes, Wakwetu. Let me ask my honorable, have you heard how people are insulting on social media? Airing matters that are in court? Is that allowed? People like the guy called Why Me, does the honorable really read what is on social media? Honorable, did you do your research nicely?
Thank you very much. What's the name?
Isaac Chileshe.
Isaac Chileshe, thank you very much. Yes, I was in Parliament, and yes, PF lost power because of some of those excesses. And yes, there have been abuse of the social media by certain characters. That is correct. Okay. But that does not warrant the government to curtail the rights of Zambians who are well-meaning, as it were. You know, if you talk about, let me give an example. Just in Kabwe, a caller was arrested for raising an issue based on bread and butter. Just a while ago, somebody who just said you gave fertilizer to southern province, but it's raining in northern province. The man was taken to task. So I think there is, for me, one thing I've learned. In fact, I'm one of the people who led the study to understand what led to the loss of PF.
Okay.
I'm privy to that. And one thing I've learned is that when something goes wrong, admit something has gone wrong. You know, and as such, that is why we are punished by the people of Zambia. The advice is that UPNB should not take the same route. This is a route which destroyed PF, as it were. You cannot today come and want to regulate podcast and live streaming. Where are we going as Zambians, as it were? You know, and he's talking about backward to TV. We saw how it was an avenue people to say the unprintables. We've had situations where, for example, right now there's some Zimba gentleman who Fimba Pokia. You could hear the unprintables, the issues against the former president. Okay, he has not been reprimanded at all. So for me, there must be fairness in how we handle these matters. So when there's fairness, I think we will make progress in terms of how best we harness our democracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chileshe comes back again. Mr. Isaac Chileshe. He's from Garden, actually.
Okay.
He says those ideas he is talking about on date, why didn't he tell the PF until PF defaulted on our date? Let us not talk things that you failed to do when you were in power and you began to blame your friends. Honorable, the things that you're discussing, why, according to Chileshe, Mr. Chileshe is asking, why when these implemented by the former party?
First and foremost is that, firstly, I was in the...
By the way, he acknowledges that he's your tribal cousin. So no wonder he's hitting you hard.
No, I mean, for me, there's need to have health discussion. And what is happening, we are engaging one another, as it were. So, for me, I was PF, you know, and...
Are you still PF?
No, actually, I officially resigned some 2 years ago, yeah. For now, it's time to introspect and reflect.
So you are speaking as an independent mind?
As an independent mind.
Without any political affiliation?
No political affiliation.
Fantastic.
Yes, I'm talking as a concerned citizen,
okay.
As it were. So for me, is that time and again, you've heard to say, no, the president has failed because of those who surround him.
Yes.
Okay? The president failed those who surround him. It is not true. It is because the president has failed to harness the information which gets through to him by many channels. Every week the president receives intelligence reports and he has got many sources in terms of what is obtaining on various sectors of the economy.
So it's not an issue of those that surround the president?
No.
Because we've heard this from different administrations. Nelson, from different administrations, from the time of the MMD, those that surround presidents, insulate them from the realities that obtain on the ground. Are these political semantics, political jargons to confuse the masses, as opposed to what you're saying, Honorable, that a head of state is given intelligence information, for instance, every week, and there are different avenues of information that channels that he gets information from?
Yeah, because the issue is that you are given that information. Also, it depends on, as a president, who you listen to.
Okay.
So for me, is that to say the president has failed because of those around him? No. So I want to try to answer why we didn't give that advice during PF.
Yes.
We provided that guidance. We didn't need to go out and shout to say we're providing these supports or we're providing, but you can only to an extent provide that information. But it's upon the leadership, the powers that be, to apply themselves, as it were. We spoke behind the scenes to say how can this be better be addressed, as it were. So for me, it also goes to President HH. President HH, he has information. He knows what is obtaining right now on the ground. Even when he was actually pronouncing himself to say Zambia is thriving in terms of democracy, he knows what is obtaining on the ground. So that being the case, when he gets that information, let him be applied to the best and to the interest of the Zambians, as it were. No, so for me is that leaders must listen, must do more of listening, and do what people are asking for.
Okay. Honorable, you are a former member of parliament. Let me get your thoughts on CDF, or Constituency Development Fund, as it were. It has been increased. There are pronouncements that it's going to be increased each and every year. Now, Honorable, let's look at the application of Constituency Development Fund and its access as well. Let's zero in on this particular issue.
Yeah, when I was in Parliament, the allocation was about 1.6 billion. Of course, the intention to increase CDF is a good one.
Okay.
It's a good one. That said, but I think there are thematic issues which this government needs to address. If at all this CDF can reach the most vulnerable and drive the development agenda which is supposed to do. So the first aspect is that when I was member of parliament, the capacity of councils was a problem.
Okay.
We had audit queries time and again based on that 1.6. Okay, audit queries are at times initial to implement these projects. Okay, so it boils down to institutional capacity of these councils. We'll talk about institutional capacity, we'll talk about the resources, competencies, and structures. Now that the amounts have been increased, what is the institutional capacity to handle that? If there are challenges to handle 1.6, so there is need for government to capacitate these councils to effectively apply themselves. And furthermore, they must look at all the processes and mechanisms which have been put in place to provide for appraisal, identification, appraisal of this CDF implementation, and so on and so forth. What mechanisms have been put in place? What seamless mechanisms are put in place to ensure that there is efficiency and effectiveness in how this CDF is implemented? Okay.
Now, Honorable, just on that one, is this why we are seeing various councils being cited in the Auditor General's report and are being called to appear before the Parliamentary Accounts Committee or local government? Is this why we are seeing councils being called to appear and being cited in the Auditor General's report because of the lack of proper mechanisms to beef up capacity to the councils?
Yeah, 28 million, 0.3, it's a lot of money.
Now 30.
Now 30.
Now
Yeah.
30.
Now 30. It's a lot of money. There is need to capacitate these councils so that they have the capacity to apply themselves in terms of resources, budget allocation for operations must be adequate, and also in terms of relevant competences required to apply themselves. Mind you, what has happened is that, for example, you've seen some departmental budgets being collapsed to CTF. Previously, Ministry of Health could buy ambulances, but that has been collapsed to CDF. The police used to buy the vehicles, that has been collapsed to CDF. And you ask yourself, much as I know that these huge projects are centrally procured, but do the councils have the capacity to handle all those processes as it were? What capacities have they been given, or competencies? So there's need to do that. But furthermore, the other aspect which has become problematic is the low uptake, of these CDF funds among the beneficiaries. So at times you can pronounce 30 million. What has been pronounced versus what has been disbursed, and what to constituencies, and what has people have actually been given. There's huge disparities. So there's need to smoothen that, as it were. But also the other problem which we have is lack of information. Some people actually they're blank. Okay, about the CDF information. The other aspect is some people, their perception of political manipulation. If we go and apply, we know the outcome. Okay. Yeah, so there are all those issues. But another aspect which we must be wary of in this implementing CDF, it is the role of the member of parliament. One of the law of a member of parliament is to debate the budgets, appropriate the resources. At that level, they allocate budget on CDF to the local government at high level. Okay, they allocate to councils, and then to local government ministry, and that is taken to councils, and the councils apply themselves, they implement. But what has happened of late is that you find a member of parliament has been involved in the nitty-gritty of procuring this equipment. Okay. That in itself is a trap.
And I would also like to get your perspective on this issue. We've seen that time and again, the argument has been that the Constituency Development Fund, yes, it's a good vehicle for development, but why is it that it seems more of rural areas based than like urban areas benefiting?
What it is, the 30 million is allocated regardless whether it's an urban or pre-urban or rural based constituency. But also it depends on the team applying themselves, because I'm told there's that allocation. As to how much it is based to the constituencies, I'm not privy to that. But again, you've seen other constituencies performing very well,
and others are not.
Okay, an example is Nakonde. It's one of them which is performing very well. Another one is Lumezi. Okay, so they have got the same resource. So the question again, you look down, is the capacity from the MP himself going down, as it were. But the issue which I wanted to raise about the participation of MPs in the nitty-gritty of procurement is a trap, and it's a danger. Because what happens is that when you apply yourselves, at an opportune time, the council, through the ministry, they come back to report in the committees, local government committees. And if there are gaps in terms of this procurement, the member of parliament are the ones who come to question them of these gaps.
Yes.
Now, you are involved in the procurement of a grader, okay? You're involved in the procurement, whatever it is, and something goes wrong, and you want to come and they hold accountable the executive. They'll tell them, you are part and parcel of this process. So, by and large, I think there's need to address these bottlenecks, institutional capacity, and also those which relates to the beneficiaries, and also the participation of, not the overbearing participation of MPs, but also the Ministry of Local Government in terms of the centralized approach to procure these huge projects when it's supposed to be community development funds, but actually procurement are done up there. To what extent do the community participate in that process? So these bottlenecks needs to actually to be smoothened and strengthened. So basically that's that.
Okay, as we begin to wind up, Honorable, maybe let's find out the fight against corruption under the UPND. The 2 years plus, is it 6 months now? Your views, how's been the fight against corruption?
The fight has been about corruption. Obviously, corruption is a cancer. When, for example, a procurement is being done for a project, okay, and somebody goes away with a $2 million in their pockets, what that does is that when there was supposed to be an improved service delivery in health, somebody will die because of corruption.
Indeed.
When that money should have gone to build a school, in Shango, and the child has to continue walking for so many kilometers, okay? When a mother in UTH gives birth, but there are complications, and there is no equipment to effectively manage that, is corruption responsible for that? So corruption, past and present, must be dealt with, okay? But for me, is the model of operandi, how this is being done, okay? Already, like I earlier alluded to, some of the institutions of governance have already moved to State House, okay? And in that case, what has happened is that, for argument's sake, you found that somebody who's from the ruling party, okay, is pronounced to have committed a certain crime, which is corrupt related, and somebody who's in the opposition does the same. The police will very quick to move in the opposition, and in fact even restricts the access to the property. But when it is for those in the ruling party, they drag their feet. So the point is that rule of law is that demands that the law must be blind, and there must be the law must be impartial, as it were. So for me, the fight hasn't been that effective.
Okay.
Hasn't been that effective. Why? Because the institution of governance, vis-a-vis DEC, SEC, and all those, even the judiciary itself has not been spared, has hampered the effective approach to deal with the issue of corruption.
Do we see political interference?
You can't rule out that, because we have seen in instances where there is a pronouncement about an individual who's involved in corrupt practices.
Okay.
But SEC, people have gone to SEC to give evidence of what's obtaining. But SEC has been quiet. And there's an indictment for my brother, who's the chairperson for SEC, because people have been reported who are in this government, okay, but the SEC or other relevant institutions have not moved in. So there is to be consistency in how we want to apply ourselves to fight corruption.
But Honorable, maybe the question would be, why are we seen as a country to massage corruption, for instance? We have seen countries like China, we have seen countries like America itself, we have seen countries like South Africa, how they've dealt with individuals that have been accused to have engaged in corrupt practices. One of them is former President Jacob Zuma. He was accused of corruption practices and he was forced to resign. Why, as Zambia, are we seen to massage, to play with kid gloves when it comes to issues or matters that hinge on corruption?
The answer to that is twofold. Of course, Zambia is a constitutional democracy.
Okay.
And it provides that some of the institutions which are at the core of handling these corrupt cases must be independent. Even as they apply themselves, there must be independence.
Like America, like South Africa.
Yes, like South Africa. But the institutions like I've already mentioned, okay, law enforcement agencies, the institutions like the judiciary. The question which arises is that why are we as such is because these institutions have been compromised.
By who? By ourselves as the people? Honorable? By you, the politicians?
I'll give an example. Dex sits at SEC, and SEC sits at State House, and the president himself. If something goes wrong with this State House and his staff, something goes wrong, how will SEC come through to deal with that matter? Okay, so the buck stops at the goodwill of the president to ensure that there's autonomy in these institutions which have been mandated to actually apply themselves in the issues to do with corruption.
Okay.
There must be goodwill. That borders on morality and ethics. There must be goodwill from the president himself. He must not be seen to take action which are at variance to what we call for to ensure effective fight of corruption. So basically for me, this fight, yes, they can be provided for in the Constitution. We've seen how the Constitution has been bluntly violated in Parliament, as it were. Okay? So, and it's the same Constitution which provides independence of this institution. But the man at the top says, you're coming to State House. It's an example. So basically, there must be goodwill and commitment to the president and the powers that be.
Okay. Nelson?
Yes, I think we'll have to call it a day from here.
Okay, so quickly, before we call it a day, Nelson, Mr. Chilesha comes back again. So he says, I agree with him on CDF about the capacity for councils. Look at how my constituency, Malole, which is Mungwi Council, was embarrassed. That's why we're pushing for amendment of the law to take back elective offices like MPs to handle it. And again, it shows what caliber of people were appointed in those offices who are unqualified. When I come in after HH, I will appoint you, Honorable, and Mr. Okay, to watch the councils. Let me be strong. Let me be strong. Monetary CDM. So that's Mr. Chilesha. They are giving us a light moment this particular morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Chilesha from Garden there. Nelson, we have to go.
Yes, we'll have to call it a day, and for us to call it a day, we say thank you so much to Mr. Sensho Banda, who is former Kasanenga Member of Parliament, for joining us this morning and having breakfast with us. All we can wish for you is a happy new week, but we even leave you with the money market so that you know, in case of you are one that knows how to transact when it comes to issues. Dollar Kwacha has been Joe Clavelo, Simat, as well as myself, Nelson Zulu. There's only a certain way that I'm going to pronounce that name correctly because I'm the only one that knows how to pronounce it.
You're the only one that
even the owner doesn't know.